the potential legal options will depend on what the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder reveal in terms of what happened here. Early indications are, information that's been leaked, is that those switches, they've said, were moved. Here's what we don't know. Families deserve the respect of transparency and to know exactly what happened.
उनकी कोई रिस्पांसिबिलिटी नहीं थी. इतने सारे जो पैसेंजर थे उसमें उनकी तो कोई रिस्पांसिबिलिटी होनी चाहिए. बस मैं वही चाहती हूँ कि हमको इंसाफ मिले, कि सेटिस्फेक्शन मिले, कि इसके बाद कोई भी ऐसी कोई ना हो. बोइंग पर भी मैं करना चाहती हूँ क्लेम.
How many families of AI-171 air crash victims do you represent?
Currently more than 65. We think we're maybe at 70 now. We had meetings late into the night again last night, but certainly at least 65.
Are you here in India to meet them?
Yes, we have been asked by families to come help understand what happened and why it happened, and what options they may have available to them, both under the Montreal Convention claims as well as potential claims in the United States against Boeing.
Have you visited the crash site?
Yes. We spent a good deal of time at the crash site. It's a sobering experience, obviously. You feel the magnitude of what happened and the responsibility that you take on for the families.
Mike, what sort of legal action are you planning to take on behalf of the families you represent?
So the potential legal options will depend on what the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder reveal in terms of what happened here. If the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder indicate that there is a defect with the aircraft, for example, in the FADEC system or the throttle control malfunctioning system, then the options are to bring a defective product or a product liability claim in the United States for those claims. If it's an Air India claim, then those would most likely fall under the Montreal Convention.
Mike, why are you fighting this case? What is the reason behind it?
Aviation safety, product safety, matters to everyone, whether you are a member of the flying public on an airplane or, as some of the victims in this case, on the ground in the building. As a whole, the public deserves safe products. We need to be able to count on transportation as being safe. And so part of what product liability attorneys like myself do is to fight for improvements in products as we go forward.
Mike, why are you planning to take the court battle outside India?
So there are many advantages to filing cases in the United States. Our legal system is such that in the U.S., one person can stand on a level playing field with a multinational corporation and ask for accountability, ask for answers, ask to hold that corporation or company accountable for what they've done. And so we feel it's important, because the plane in this case was manufactured in the United States, that the families, the victims, have a voice in those claims in the U.S.
Mike, did a computer move the fuel switches, or was it a pilot error?
That is an excellent question. As you know, the early indications are, information that's been leaked, is that those switches, they've said, were moved. Here's what we don't know. We don't know if the switches actually moved or if the current changed and it made it look like a movement in the computer, right? We know that the computer system on board the 787 is extremely complicated, extraordinarily complex. And this plane is equipped with a throttle control malfunctioning system. In other words, if the plane thinks the throttle is malfunctioning, it can turn the fuel back. It can cut power to the engines. We know there was at least one other incident in 2019, the All Nippon case, in which a 787 coming in on landing suffered an engine failure, both engines, but the plane was able to land. That's interesting in that case. Even though both engines suffered power failure, and even though it was determined that the computer dialed it back, one big distinction here, those pilots were not blamed because those pilots are still alive. And so in this case, we think it is highly speculative and a rush to judgment to blame the pilots in this case who cannot speak for themselves. We just don't know what happened. And that makes release of the data that much more.
Why should the TCMA and FedEx be investigated?
And that's what we were just talking about, because those are fully automated systems. What we're concerned with is something known as erroneous inputs, uncontrolled inputs from the computer, something that takes the pilot out of the manual control. Anytime that can happen, you have the potential for a failure. You know, have you ever had a computer that never failed? I have not. Computers can fail. Computers can malfunction. And so that has to be fully investigated.
Mike, how did the U.S. media get leaked cockpit conversations before families got answered?
Yeah, and I strongly disagree with everything that happened in that set of circumstances. I fully don't understand how that happens. I know that generically speaking, the Indian government and Air India shared data with regulatory or investigative bodies in the United States, such as the FAA or the NTSB. Someone made a decision then to then leak some of that information to the media. You have to wonder why. Why was that done? What purpose did that serve? Was that intended to shift the focus and support the narrative that the pilots are at fault? Was that done to offer cover or protection for Boeing? Was that done just as a smokescreen? We don't know the answer to that right now. Again, that's a small snippet of information that was taken out of context. We need the broader context of the entire conversation. This was a very short flight. And so it can't be that difficult to have all of that information so that our experts can help our families understand what happened.
Mike, why are they blaming the pilots without evidence? Why are they?
It's the easiest, quickest, shortest thing to do. It's a rush to judgment. It's a knee-jerk reaction. It's blaming someone who cannot speak for themselves, right? And in these other incidents that have occurred, those pilots have not been blamed because those pilots are alive and they can speak for themselves. That's why.
Are Boeing own employees certifying planes instead of independent regulators?
Yes. This is a process that's gone back years. It's referred to as ODA. It's a self-certification process that the FAA has allowed to occur at Boeing and other plane manufacturers, by the way. Essentially, internal employees at Boeing act as self-regulators. They inspect equipment and parts and systems, and they certify that those have met the requirements and the regulations. Unfortunately, those same people are also on the Boeing payroll. And so it's difficult to separate this self-interest when that occurs because obviously they have a vested interest in approving their own product.
Why are more, even after this crash, is something big hidden?
That is an excellent question. We want to know the answer to that question as well. There are two possibilities. One is that people are just paying more attention. Because when there's a tragedy, you begin to watch and you sort of listen for the word Boeing or the word 787 or airline crash. So that's part of it. But there has been a troubling uptick in incidents involving the 787. We're aware of the flight from Dulles to Munich that lost engine power and had to return. We're aware of the flight from LA to Santiago that had an unintended rat deployment and had to come back. Those provide millions of unanswered questions as to why, what caused this, and is there a relationship between those failures and what happened here? We don't know.
Why is getting the raw black box data so important for justice?
That is the most accurate, most complete, and unbiased record of what happened in this crash. It's not subjective. It's not subject to one person's opinion or interpretation. The FDR is digital data, and it contains the record of what the computers were doing, what the engines were doing, what inputs were being commanded into the software. And so in order for everyone to understand what happened here, we need that complete, unbiased, accurate record. Transparency. First and foremost, transparency. Without transparency, we don't know what happened. We're left to speculation. We're left to conjecture. And that's wrong. It's inappropriate. It's premature. The families deserve the respect of transparency and to know exactly what happened, because only with that transparency can you hope to have accountability. Can you hope to get to the answer and determine who is responsible and seek that accountability.
And you're fighting for him. Do you think will they justice ever?
What's your interpretation of the word justice? Because the question is this, I hear people all the time talk about closure and whether that's a real concept. These families are dealing with a new reality, new life, things that have happened to them that can never be undone. I think they're looking for answers. They want to know why. And in addition to transparency, the second most important question or demand from these families is, how can we prevent this from ever happening again to another family? This should never happen.
मेरी डॉटर थी, 25 साल की थी। वो एक्सीडेंट हुआ था लास्ट ईयर, उसके लिए उसका टीथ पूरा रिमूव हो गया था, उसकी ट्रीटमेंट के लिए आई थी और वो जाने वाली थी उस दिन।
तो एक ही डॉटर थी आपकी?
एक ही डॉटर और एक सन है। सन बड़ा है और ये छोटी थी।
मैम, जैसे माइक आपका केस लड़ रहा है,
हाँ,
क्या कहेंगे उसके बारे में?
मैं बस इतना ही कहना चाहती हूँ कि एयरलाइंस जो उनकी जो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होती है सभी पैसेंजर की, कोई भी हो, अभी तो मेरी बेटी थी, मैं बस इतना कहो हमें इंसाफ मिले बस।
क्या चाहती है, किस प्रकार से इंसाफ?
वो इंसाफ तो वैसे जो भी वो क्लेम हमारे लिए वो सब करते हैं। मैं एयरलाइंस को उनकी कोई रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं थी, इतने सारे जो पैसेंजर थे उसमें उनकी तो कोई रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होनी चाहिए। बस मैं वही चाहती हूँ कि हमको इंसाफ मिले, कि सेटिस्फेक्शन मिले, कि इसके बाद कोई भी ऐसी कोई ना हो। इतना ज्यादा जो वो हुआ है एक्सीडेंट, ऐसा कुछ भी ना हो।
जैसे माइक जैसे लोग आपके साथ में जुड़े हैं, तो लगता है कि आपको इंसाफ मिले?
अभी तो उम्मीद तो है, बी पॉजिटिव। और बोइंग पर भी मैं करना चाहती हूँ क्लेम।
बोइंग पर क्यों?
बोइंग पर भी कि इतने सारे जो पैसेंजर वो ऐसे अलाउ कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, तो उनकी जो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होती है कि जो सिक्योरिटी होता है कि प्लेन में जो कोई भी हो उनको चेक करना चाहिए कुछ भी। और वो जो है रिपोर्ट बार, वो उनको मैक को दे।
अच्छा, वो जो रिपोर्ट,
हाँ रिपोर्ट्स, हाँ
वो रिपोर्ट्स,
हाँ
क्या चाहती है रिपोर्ट्स के बारे में, क्या बताया आपने?
रिपोर्ट्स वो जो हम चाहते हैं कि हम सभी पेरेंट्स जो भी फैमिली वो कि वो हमारे लिए इतनी दूर से यहाँ पे आते हैं तो वो उनको रिपोर्ट दे, कि जो भी हो लीगली जो रिपोर्ट वो बाहर निकाले वो रिपोर्ट उनको दे, जो भी हो सही इंसाफ हमको मिले बस।